I started my job as a medical technician a few weeks ago. It was my first time working the night shift in the emergency department. I thought I'd be helping people, but the hospital felt off. It was old, built in the 70s, and the lights barely lit the hallways. I often felt out of my depth. My second night was when everything began to change. I was sorting supplies at the nurse's station. It was too quiet. I was about to call the station when I heard a soft sobbing coming from an empty patient room down the hall. I thought maybe it was my imagination or leftover noise. I tried to brush it off and continued my work. But that sound wouldn't fade. I walked toward the room. The lights were off. My heart raced as I pushed the door open. It was empty, just a bed with neatly pressed sheets. Nothing at all. I felt a chill go down my spine but told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. I forgot to lock the door behind me when I left. The next nights were just as strange. One time, I was cleaning up some medical charts. I noticed one had been turned around. I hadn't touched it. I picked it up and put it back, but when I glanced back a few minutes later, it was turned around again. My chest tightened. Was someone playing tricks on me? Then there was the 4 pump. I had left it in pieces after working on it. The next morning, I found it all put back together. I stared at it, trying to understand what I was seeing. I was alone, wasn't I? I began to see dark shapes moving at the edges of my vision. I turned to look fully, but nothing was there. Just shadows, I told myself. Maybe I was losing it. But then there was the night I saw a figure at the nurse's station. It stood there, looking at me. I raised my hand to wave, but when I blinked, it vanished. My heart pounded. I wanted to leave, but I had to stay. One night, I took a deep breath and tried to shake off the feeling. But that night was different. As I looked out the window, I felt eyes on me. It wasn't just a feeling. It felt real. That's when I heard a soft whisper in my ear, "You're not alone." I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. My skin crawled. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was hidden in the shadows. I felt cold even when the air was warm. I wanted to believe it was all in my head, but deep down, I knew I was wrong. I finished my shift that night, but I never felt so uneasy. All I could think was that I was never really alone. The hospital was alive with something I could not see. I dreaded going back, but I had to. I couldn't escape the truth. I was part of something dark. The next shift arrived faster than I wished. I felt a sense of dread as I entered the hospital. It looked the same, those dim lights casting long shadows. The familiar chill swept through me, and I could almost hear the echoes of previous nights that I told myself to stay focused. I grabbed my clipboard and headed to the emergency room. The usual sounds of beeping machines and murmured conversations filled the air, but just as quickly, the uneasy quiet returned. I glanced at the clock. It was just past midnight. While organizing supplies behind the nurse's station, I noticed the door to room 307 slightly ajar. My stomach twisted. I had learned to avoid that room. I couldn't shake the memory of the soft sobbing that haunted me. Yet another part of me was curious, a draw I couldn't ignore. Taking a deep breath, I moved toward the door. Just as I reached for the handle, I heard it again. That soft cry. It was faint but distinct, echoing in the emptiness around me. I peeked in. Room 307 was dark and empty, save for a single chair positioned toward the window. I stepped inside. The sobbing stopped. The silence felt heavier. I scanned the room, instinctively clenching my fists. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaky. No response. I felt foolish, but I couldn't shake an inexplicable urge to investigate. I walked further in, and that's when I saw it. A small, black object on the floor. My heart raced as I knelt down. It was a child's toy, a stuffed rabbit with an unnaturally bright red bow. I had no memory of seeing it before, but it felt wrong. I picked it up and a chill engulfed me. Suddenly, the air felt electric. I heard a whisper so close it felt like it was inside my head. "Bring it back to me." The sound was chilling, like ice running down my spine. I dropped the toy as though it burned me, stumbling back against the wall. The instant I released it, the lights flickered. I darted out of the room, my heart pounding. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath. Something twisted inside me, that horrible feeling that I had crossed a line I shouldn't have. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes following me. "Are you okay?" A nurse named Maria rushed up to me, concern etched on her face. I think I saw something," I stammered. "What?" "You need to focus. There's a lot happening tonight." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from down the hallway. My heart raced as Ivy, one of the doctors, popped her head out of an adjoining room. "Did you hear that?" she asked, looking more pale than usual. That I nodded, trying to piece it all together. Just when I thought I had a handle on things, more chaos erupted. "We have to check it out," Ivy insisted, turning on her heels and heading toward the noise that I hesitated but felt an overwhelming urge to follow. As we walked down the corridor, shadows seemed to twist and weave around us, distorting the light. I almost called out to Ivy, but my voice died in my throat. Then everything went dark. The power suddenly cut out, plunging us into an inky blackness. I could barely hear my own breathing as fear gripped me. "Stay close," Ivy whispered urgently. In that suffocating darkness, I realized whatever was here, it was ready to reveal itself. The darkness felt thick and alive, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. I held my breath, straining to hear anything beyond the racing of my heart. The silence was deafening. "Can you see anything?" Ivy's voice was barely a whisper. I shook my head, my limbs frozen in place. I wished I could move, could find a light switch or even the flashlight in my pocket. Anything to break the oppressive blackness. Suddenly, a faint glimmer cut through the dark. It flickered like a candle flame, illuminating the hallway just enough to see Ivy's concerned expression. She inched forward, and I followed, feeling like a child trailing her parent into the unknown. As we moved, the whispers began again. They rose and fell like a chilling wind. "Help me, bring it back," the words wrapped around me, tightening like a noose. I felt dread wash over me. "Did you hear that?" Ivy's eyes widened, her voice now more urgent. I nodded, panic bubbling in my throat. "We need to find the generator," I managed to say, but the words felt useless. I felt trapped, like prey being stalked. Just then, a loud bang shattered the silence, sending both of us jumping back in shock. I looked toward the sound's origin. A door further down the hallway had swung open, creaking ominously. "Stay together," Ivy said, taking a deep breath. We moved cautiously toward the doorway. The light flickered, and for a moment, we glimpsed a silhouette inside the room. My stomach dropped. It was the figure of a woman, her hair hanging like shadows around her face. She stood completely still, looking out the window. "Ivy," I whispered, not wanting to alert her. My instincts screamed to turn and run, but I couldn't leave Ivy alone. "Hello?" Ivy called out softly. There was no response. Without breaking her gaze, the woman slowly raised her arm and pointed. My heart raced as an icy chill surged through the air. Ivy didn't seem to notice. She took a step forward, drawn to the figure. "Don't!" I shouted, but my voice felt weak in the dark. Then, as if triggered by my warning, the lights returned with a snap. The sudden brightness blinded me. I shielded my eyes, blinking rapidly. When my vision cleared, the woman was gone, leaving nothing but an empty room behind. "Ivy!" I gasped, but she was standing frozen. Her face was pale, eyes wide. "What just happened?" She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know. I saw someone, I stammered, trying to catch my breath. Then, the emergency alarm blared to life, piercing through the confusion. Red lights flashed, the hallway igniting with frantic movement. Ivy and I exchanged a frantic glance. "We need to get to the nurse's station," I urged. As we hurried toward the station, the whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around us like a dark cloud. I heard a child's laugh mixed in, followed by a sob. My heart raced, I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if it was real. We turned the corner, and I froze. There it was again, the stuffed rabbit from room 307, lying in the middle of the floor. "What is it?" Ivy asked, but I couldn't find my voice. The toy seemed to pulse with energy, begging for attention. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I didn't dare touch it, but I couldn't look away. I knew something was terribly wrong. "Someone has to get rid of it," I finally said, stepping back. Ivy's brow knitted together. "What do you mean?" Before I could answer, the whispers intensified. "Bring it back to me." The hospital felt alive, and I couldn't stop the flood of questions racing through my mind. What had I stumbled into? And what would happen if I didn't confront it? The rabbit lay there, an innocent toy seemingly untouched by the chaos around us. But I felt its weight. It was a tether to something lurking in the shadows. Ivy shifted beside me, eyes darting from the rabbit to me. "We can't stay here," I said, my voice shaky. Ivy nodded, but her gaze lingered on the toy. "What if it needs help?" "Help?" I echoed, incredulous. "It's just a stuffed animal." The whispers surged again, louder this time, drowning my thoughts. "Bring it back to me." I swear I heard that same voice before, I whispered, feeling the fear rise in my chest. Ivy turned to me, her expression unreadable. "What if it's connected to the woman?" "Maybe," I said, forcing myself to think. "But whatever this is, it's not right." The air felt charged, as if the very walls were listening to our conversation. I wanted to leave, but something kept pulling me toward the rabbit. "I can't do this," I said suddenly, stepping back. "We need to go." Just then, the lights flickered again. The overhead fluorescent bulbs buzzed and dimmed before plunging us back into darkness. I felt Ivy's hand grip my wrist tightly. "Let us move," she shouted over the cacophony. Sprinting away from the rabbit, we hurried down the hall, the red emergency lights casting eerie shadows. The whispers intensified, echoing off the walls as we ran. They morphed into a symphony of cries and laughter. I forced myself to focus on Ivy, pulling her along despite the panic coursing through me. "We're almost there," I called out, desperately hoping the nurse's station was close. But as we rounded the corner, we halted abruptly. The nurse's station came into view, but it was in chaos. Papers were scattered everywhere, and the chairs lay overturned. "Who did this?" Ivy gasped, her eyes wide with fear. I scanned the area, suddenly aware of footsteps behind us. The sound was accompanied by a low chuckle that sent chills racing down my spine. I turned quickly, half expecting to see the woman or something worse. Instead, nothing. Just empty hallways. "Ivy, did you hear that?" She nodded, eyes darting nervously. "We have to find someone." We stepped cautiously toward the station, but the whispers grew fiercer, surrounding us. "Bring it back, bring it back." "We need to get out of here," I murmured, moving back. But Ivy's gaze was fixated on the open door of an adjacent room, barely visible in the dim light. "Look!" In that moment, I realized what was drawing us to the room. Another toy, this one lifeless and dusty, resting on a table. The silhouette of another rabbit, identical to the one in the hallway. "No," I breathed. "We can't go near it." But Ivy was already moving, stepping into the doorway while I hesitated. "It might be important." "Ivy!" I shouted, panic lacing my tone. Then, just as I reached for her arm, the lights flickered again, plunging us into complete darkness. The whispers were now shouts, echoing through the air. I grabbed Ivy's hand, but before I could pull her back with me, the sudden jolt of static electricity made the hair on my arm stand on end. The moment was surreal. I could barely hear Ivy's voice as she called out for me, just a wisp amid the noise. "We have to leave now." I screamed, then everything went black. I blinked, trying to make sense of the darkness that engulfed us. Panic clawed at my chest as I fumbled for Ivy, my hand reaching out into the void. "Ivy, where are you?" A faint whisper brushed against my ear, nearly drowned out by the chaos. "Bring it back." The voice was closer now, like it was circling around us. I felt a shiver trickle down my spine. "Ivy." I called again. Silence answered. I forced myself to breathe. The emergency lights flickered back on momentarily, painting the walls in a bloody red hue. Just enough to catch a glimpse of Ivy's face, her eyes wide with terror. "There's something in here," she shouted, backing away from the darkened doorway. Before I could register her words, I heard it too, a soft thud, followed by a low creaking sound. I turned slowly toward the source, my heart racing. It was the sound of movement from inside the room with the dusty rabbit. "We need to get out. Now," I declared, my voice firm despite the tremor I felt inside. Just then, the lights flickered again, but this time, they seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The whispers morphed into laughter, a mocking sound that pierced through my sanity. In the brief moments of light, I caught a glimpse of movement. The rabbit on the table was no longer alone. Something else was shifting, hiding in the shadows. Ivy's face drained of color. "What was that?" "I don't know," I replied, keeping my eyes locked on the room. "But I don't want to find out." The lights dimmed again, plunging us into darkness. I could feel Ivy's breath quicken beside me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Then, out of nowhere, the horrid voice cried out, "Bring it back. It belongs to me." A chill shot through me. There was no doubt now, whatever we had stumbled into was not just a figment of our imagination. I yanked Ivy's hand and turned to flee. But just then, something brushed against my leg, something cold and feathered. "Move!" I shouted, yanking Ivy with me as we darted past the open doorway. We rushed down the hall, but the corridor stretched endlessly. The way back felt warped, as if the hospital itself was shifting. My heart raced. We had to find the exit, we had to escape. Then I saw something at the end of the hallway light. A doorway. The sign above it flickered erratically, "Exit." "I see it," I yelled, urgency pushing me forward. But as we reached the doorway, it swung shut with a deafening bang. The sound echoed and reverberated through the hall, drowning out the whispers. Both of us froze. What just happened? Ivy's voice trembled. That I turned, looking into the dark recesses of the corridor behind us. The shadows seemed deeper now. I leaned in closer, straining to hear any sign of movement. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, illuminating a figure standing at the opposite end of the hall. It was small, hunched over, almost childlike, with a familiar sway as if searching. That my breath caught in my throat. That's the rabbit. The figure hadn't moved, but I knew it was looking right at us. Something inside me awakened, a raw instinct screaming to run. "Ivy! We need to go. Now!" But it was too late. The door we had just passed through creaked open slowly, revealing an empty abyss behind it. Then, without warning, a shrill laughter erupted, echoing through the hospital, bouncing off the walls like a twisted melody that seemed to challenge our escape. I grasped Ivy's arm and pulled her toward the stairwell, praying we wouldn't be trapped again. But with every step we took, I could feel the echoes of the past clawing back at us. We were not alone. And whatever had claimed the rabbit was not finished with us yet. I sprinted down the stairs, Ivy close behind. Each step felt heavy, my breath echoing in my ears. The laughter faded into an unsettling silence, but my pulse pounded like a drum. Whatever lurked in the shadows was still pursuing us. I reached the bottom of the stairs and pushed open the door to the ground floor, nearly colliding with the wall. The reception area was eerily still, fluorescent lights flickering on and off, casting erratic shadows. I glanced back, expecting to see the figure from the hallway, but it was gone. Just silence. "Where do we go?" Ivy asked, her voice breaking. She was trembling, and I could see the fear written all over her face. "Let us just get outside," I said, scanning the room for any sign of another exit. "There's got to be a side door or something." As we moved toward the front glass doors, I caught sight of a dim glow from the waiting area. My heart quickened. I stepped toward it, then froze as my reflection caught my eye. The face staring back at me looked terrified and a little wild. I wasn't just scared, I felt trapped. "Come on," I urged Ivy, and we moved through the waiting area, where the glow beckoned us forward. I knew we shouldn't linger, but the light felt like a promise of safety. When we rounded the corner, I found myself in an abandoned break room. The light came from a dusty vending machine, flashing erratically. I hesitated. This wasn't right. "Ivy," I whispered, "what if we're not safe here?" "I don't want to stay." She whimpered, her voice trembling. "I just want to go home." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway we had just come from. I whipped around, heart racing. From that darkness came a flicker of movement, the small figure emerging once again. It was fainter now, but unmistakably closer. "We can't stay," I yelled, grabbing Ivy's arm once more, pulling her away from the break room. We bolted back toward the main hall, adrenaline fueling my steps, but as we turned a corner, something felt wrong. The layout had changed. The corridors angled weirdly, and the walls seemed to close in. I felt dizzy, as if the hospital itself was alive and shifting, trapping us within its embrace. "Which way?" Ivy cried, looking frantically left and right. I don't know." I stammered, panic creeping in. There had always been signs, arrows pointing the way, but now they only led to more darkness. Then the lights flickered once more, and I saw her, a shadow among the shadows, the young girl from the hallway. She stood there, staring at us, her eyes wide and glassy. "Bring it back!" she cried, her voice echoing down the corridor. My heart sank. The voice wasn't coming from her, it was a chorus, an echo of all the lost souls that roamed this place. "What does she want?" Ivy gasped, pressing against me as if trying to disappear. I instinctively took a step back, but as I did, something cold brushed against my leg again. I shot my gaze down, and shock coursed through me. The rabbit. It was at my feet, the same dusty rabbit. Why is this happening? I breathed, my mind racing. Ivy looked terrified, frozen in shock. She reached out a hand, but I grabbed her wrist, pulling her back. "No. Don't touch it." As the girl and the rabbit loomed closer, fear surged, a primal instinct begging for survival. "We have to find a way out, now," I yelled, urgency tightening my throat. Then everything became blurred, the walls closing in, the laughter beginning again, and the light flickering away. I lifted my arm as if to protect Ivy, my fingers grazing something cool above my head. A fire alarm. I pulled it down hard, and the alarm blared to life, shattering the silence, the sound almost deafening. But amid the blaring sirens, the shadows twisted and writhed, and the laughter turned to screams, relentless and hungry for us. This wasn't just a nightmare. I understood that we had stirred something far beyond our control. And now we were in its sights. That realization brought a fresh wave of terror. "Ivy, run!" I yanked Ivy's hand and sprinted down the hallway, the fire alarm shrieking through the building like a siren caught in distress. The sound was jarring, but it was our only chance. We had to get out, no matter what. Where? Where do we go? Ivy gasped, glancing behind her as if the shadows were closing in directly on us. I had no time to respond. The hallway seemed to stretch infinitely, the fluorescent lights buzzing above flickered angrily, like warning signs. We reached a junction, and I hesitated. I could feel Ivy's panic rising beside me. Right or left? I shouted, trying to muster the last shreds of logic in my fraying mind. Left. Let us go left. She cried, her voice shaky but determined. I followed her lead. As we darted down the narrow corridor, I felt a sudden chill wash over me, as if the air itself had turned treacherous. Each footfall echoed ominously, blending with the wailing alarm and leaving a haunting rhythm in my head. I had to focus. There had to be an exit. Glancing around, I sought any sign, but everything blurred together. Then, just as we rounded another corner, Ivy skidded to a halt. I almost collided with her. What? What is it? I demanded, peering over her shoulder. Her eyes were wide with terror. Look! She whispered, pointing down the next hallway. At the end of the corridor stood the girl from before, the same lost gaze fixed on us. Her form flickered as if she were barely there, but then she gestured towards the darkness behind her. Bring it back. Her voice sliced through me like ice. No, no, no. I stammered, backing away, pulling Ivy with me. The alarm blared louder, seemingly in response to our fear. This couldn't be happening. Keep moving. We can't stop. I urged, forcing Ivy to turn with me. We bolted in the opposite direction. I could hear Ivy's breath quickening, matching my own as we raced toward the nearest exit sign. Finally, we stumbled into another waiting area. To my relief, the glass doors swung out ahead, but the world beyond seemed dark. The sound of the alarm reverberated, and I could almost hear laughter mixed in with the sirens, mocking us. Almost there. I muttered, desperation clawing at my throat. It felt like forever, but as we reached the door, Ivy's hand hesitated on the handle. Wait. What if something is out there? She turned to me, wide-eyed. I didn't have a good answer. Fear gripped me, gnawing at my resolve. It's better than whatever is in here. I cried, not even sure if I believed it. With a deep breath, I pushed the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. What? Panic surged again. No. We don't have time for this. I rattled the handle, but it didn't respond. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered once more, and flickering shadows filled the room. I could hear footsteps behind us, soft but unrelenting. My heart sank. That's when I saw it, the girl from earlier, drawing closer, the same eerie smile creeping across her face. She pointed again, but this time her voice took on a strangely soothing tone. Bring it back, to us. Run. I shouted, adrenaline pumping as I grabbed Ivy's arm, forcing her to pull away from the door. The shadows grew longer, and I knew we didn't have much time left before they consumed us. As we sprinted back into the maze of hallways, I felt the eyes of the building on us, closing us off. Ivy, whatever happens, don't look back. We bolted down the hallway, our breaths coming in panicked bursts. I could still hear the girl's voice echoing in my mind, taunting me. I prayed we wouldn't encounter her again. The alarm continued to wail, drowning out my thoughts, but it also pushed us forward. We had to find a way out. We turned another corner, and Ivy slipped on something slick, stumbling. I'm okay. Just go. She gasped, her eyes wide with fear. I grabbed her arm, helping her regain her balance. The last thing I needed was for her to fall apart now. Let us keep moving. I urged, pulling her along as we rushed past dark doorways that seemed to threaten us with danger at every turn. It felt like the walls were closing in around us, pushing us towards some unseen fate. Just then, we heard a loud crash from a room to our left. It sounded like furniture being overturned. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. Should we check it out? I asked, every instinct screaming at me to keep running. Ivy shot me a look. No way. We just need to get out. Right. Right, I agreed, forcing myself to focus. We sprinted past the doorway, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was inside. I glanced back, just as the next door swung open. I froze. A shadow stepped out, tall and dark, blocking the dim light from the hallway. It was a figure, but I couldn't see their face. My heart raced again. Ivy. I whispered urgently, but she didn't hear me over the alarm. I pulled her toward the next junction, every instinct screaming that we had to get away. That we burst into another hallway, and as we did, the alarm suddenly cut off. Silence pressed in around us like a thick fog. What is happening? Ivy whispered, confusion replacing her panic. I don't know, I said, trying to steady my shaking hands. The silence felt wrong, too heavy. We need to keep moving. We crept forward, but then I saw a flicker of light further down the corridor. Do you see that? I asked, pointing. What is it? Ivy squinted, trying to make it out. A distant glow pulsed from an open door, but it felt off, an unnatural light. Let us check it out. Maybe it's an exit. Each step felt like a decision that could change everything. With every step closer, a sense of dread clung to me. I went to push the door, but the moment I touched the handle, a cold gust of air rushed past us, sending chills down my spine. Ivy gasped beside me. That's when I heard a soft whisper, just within earshot. You're not ready. Not yet. I turned to Ivy, my own fear reflected in her wide eyes. Did you hear that? Yes, what is happening? She said, backing away from the door. Maybe we should run. She interrupted suddenly. Before I could respond, she pulled me away from the door and we took off down the hallway again. The whispering followed us, echoing against the walls, teasing at the edges of my mind. Then, everything changed. The lights above flickered once more, and suddenly, shadows began to spill down the corridor, twisting and writhing like living things. Go. Now. I yelled, adrenaline flooding my veins. But, just as we reached another corner, the ground shook beneath us. I staggered, nearly losing my footing. What was happening? I turned in time to see the girl again, her face even closer now, an impossibly wide grin stretching across her features. Bring it back, she cooed. Her voice rang out clearly, and I felt unable to move. Ivy, don't look, but it was too late. Everything went dark. The darkness felt alive, a heavy blanket smothering any hope of escape. It wrapped around us, making it hard to breathe. I blinked, trying to adjust to the void. Ivy's presence felt like a point of light, but that soon vanished as I reached for her. Ivy. I called out, panic clawing at my throat. Here. She replied, her voice muffled but close. I fumbled forward, desperate to find her. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. A railing. I grasped it tightly, trying to steady my racing heart. Stay with me, I urged. The darkness was thick, I could barely see my own hands in front of me. I could still hear that whisper. It echoed like it was right next to my ear, you're not ready, where are we? Ivy's voice trembled, breaking through the silence. I don't know, I admitted, my stomach twisting. We need to move. I strained my ears, trying to pick up any sound. The whispering had faded, but the memory of that grin loomed large in my mind. As we stumbled forward, a faint light flickered back to life. It was a dim glow coming from further down the corridor. Look! I pointed in its direction, signaling for Ivy to follow. We trudged ahead, uncertainty fueling our steps. When we reached the source of the light, I found a door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, I pulled it open. The room inside was cluttered with old medical supplies. Dust hung in the air, catching the light like tiny stars. But that didn't quell my fear, something was not right. Why would there be a room like this here? Ivy whispered, peering over my shoulder. It looks abandoned. I nodded, feeling uneasy. Maybe it is. But just as I said it, a metallic clang rang out from behind us. I spun around, ready to bolt, but I couldn't see anything other than the faint glow from the room. Should we go back? Ivy asked, her anxiety transparent. I don't think we can, I replied, my voice steadying. We need to see what's in here. As we stepped further inside, something glinted on the floor. I crouched down to pick it up. It was a small, tarnished key. What do you think this is for? I murmured, turning it over in my hand. Before Ivy could answer, a chilling breeze rushed past us, and I dropped the key. It skittered across the floor into the shadows. No. Wait. I lunged to grab it, but it vanished, swallowed by the darkness. My skin crawled. Did you feel that? Ivy asked, shivering. No, I lied, barely keeping my composure. I had felt it too, a wrongness in the air, like a threatened promise. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us, shaking the walls. Ivy screamed, and I spun around, but I couldn't see anything through the frosted glass. I can't see. Ivy gasped, panic rising again. I fumbled for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. My heart raced as I pounded on the door, desperate to escape. Then I heard a voice, softer now, but still eerily familiar. You're still not ready, I froze. The shadows seemed to dance around us, palpable and alive. I felt the cold seep into my bones, freezing all thoughts except one vivid realization. This was just the beginning. Before I could process that thought, the lights flickered violently, and darkness swallowed the room once more. I stumbled against the cold, hard floor, heart pounding as I tried to catch my breath. Ivy's frantic whispers filled my ears, and the oppressive darkness around us felt like it was closing in. What do we do now? She gasped, her fingers tightening around mine. The chilling voice echoed in my mind, you're still not ready. It taunted me, wrapping around my thoughts like a vine. I struggled to shake it off. We have to find a way out. This isn't over, I muttered, trying to keep steady as panic threatened to overwhelm me. That I groped blindly through the darkness, seeking any sign of familiarity or escape. Somewhere above, the fluorescent lights flickered and buzzed, reaching out to guide us. The air felt heavy, burdened with unseen dread, but there had to be something we could do. I'm scared, Ivy whispered, her voice shaking. What if it comes back? It will find a way out, I reassured, though I wasn't sure how. In the far distance, I caught a glimmer of light again. It was faint, pulsing gently as if calling to us. Without another word, I pulled Ivy toward it. Every step felt treacherous, as if the ground might shift beneath us at any moment. But we pressed onward, the glow becoming brighter as we drew closer. It led us to another door, slightly ajar, revealing a long corridor lined with flickering lights. This has to be good, I said, forcing a shaky smile. Ivy nodded, but I could see the worry etched on her face. I felt it too, the dim hope battling against the dread that loomed over us. That we stepped cautiously inside. The corridor stretched out before us, and at the end, I could see movement, a flicker of shadow. My heart raced. What if it's just more darkness? Ivy murmured, but I could feel a strange pull toward it. Whatever it is, we need to find out, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Stay close. As we moved forward, the shadows twisted and danced along the walls, but the light ahead illuminated our path. We reached the end of the hall, and as we stepped through the doorway, the world shifted once more. That we emerged into a large, sterile room filled with hospital equipment and desolate beds. There was an eerie stillness, the air stagnant, and the light flickered overhead like a warning. This feels wrong, Ivy whispered again, her gaze darting around the room. In the center, sitting on a chair, was a small black object, another stuffed rabbit, identical to the one we had seen before. Why is it here? I breathed, instinctively backing away. Suddenly, A low murmur surged around us, growing louder and more insistent. Bring it back, bring it back. The echo seemed to pulse inside my head. Ivy's eyes widened in horror. It's calling for us. No. I shouted, shaking my head vehemently. We can't touch it. But it was too late. The pull was undeniable, and I could see Ivy stepping toward the rabbit against her will. Don't! I screamed, lunging forward. But fear and confusion clouded my movements as time bent around us. The rabbit sat there, its bright red bow flapping gently as if beckoning. Suddenly the lights went out completely, plunging us into absolute darkness again. My heart raced, memories of laughter and crying echoing in my mind. Ivy's voice cut through the chaos, trembling, it's here. No. I yelled back, squeezing my eyes shut against the panic. I had to fight it, whatever power this was, it couldn't have us. In my fingertips, I felt the cold steel of the doorknob again. With a burst of adrenaline, I swung the door open, shoving Ivy through the threshold ahead of me. Together, we stumbled into a narrow hallway lined with exit signs. My heart leaped. Light poured from an exit at the end, our salvation glowing brighter. Run! I shouted, the sounds of whispers and shadows clawing at us from behind that we bolted, sprinting toward the exit, the sirens and shadows merging in a menacing crescendo. Behind us, the voices crescendoed, bring it back. You're not ready. I pressed my body against the door, pulling Ivy with me. In a desperate push, I grasped the handle and threw the door open, the cool night air flooding in. We tumbled outside, collapsing onto the pavement, gasping for breath, but as the night enveloped us, I felt a lingering dread settle within me. The voices faded, replaced by an unnerving silence. My heart still raced, but I became acutely aware of something else, the audience of the unseen. The shadows wove themselves back together inside the hospital, waiting patiently for the next person to walk its halls. I think we did it, Ivy whispered, her breath shallow but steady. But doubt twisted in my gut that I looked back at the hospital, its darkened windows staring out like hollow eyes. What had we escaped? I could still feel the echo of the whispers, the chilling desire to be pulled back beneath the surface. I don't know if it's over, I admitted quietly. We walked away, but I felt that the strange presence still hovering, flickering just beyond the corner of my eye. Whether it was our minds or something real, I would never know. Let us just go, Ivy said softly, and as we turned to leave, I realized that even if we had escaped the building, the shadows would travel with us, lingering long after the night had passed.